We're very much, Michael, into sticking with the knitting. We don't jump around in that. We have a very good rotation. We grow about 25% wheat, and we actually, for the first time ever, seeded wheat between Christmas and New Year because we hadn't finished seeding and we wanted to get the hectare seeded. We're maybe putting a small more leaning to oils. The oilseed crops last year and the year before were really the ones that carried the game.
Major global events, whether drought, floods or conflict, inevitably shape tillage farming in Ireland, sometimes subtly and sometimes significantly. Recent developments in the Middle East are already influencing markets and could continue to do so in the weeks and months ahead. Getting a first-hand insight from those directly involved in the production is essential to understanding the real picture on the ground. You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. If you're enjoying the series, we'd really appreciate it if you could follow the podcast and leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Eastern Europe is regarded as one of the world's breadbaskets, and the production from this region often sets the tone for global grain prices over the coming years. In this episode, the first of two, we'll chat to Jim McCarthy, who farms a large area of land in northeastern Romania. He'll be sharing his perspective on the challenges currently facing growers in that region and the steps he is taking on his farm to remain profitable. Jim, we haven't spoken in a while, so just to catch up on where you are in your farm today, how's the spring planting going so far?
We've finished bits of new land, a couple of wet places. We've finished seeding. We've had a long, very long, cold, damp winter. Definitely the longest, coldest winter I've been here. So spring was slow to come. It's been very good for the winter wheat and the rape. They're looking very well. And the spring seeding, we didn't really get going until kind of the 13th, 14th, which is 2 weeks behind for us. And we've been going slowly because, for instance, the sunflowers, we grow a lot of sunflowers. They need 10 degrees in the soil. And we actually seeded a lot of this. We were finished sowing the maize, and we had a lot of sunflowers that were seeded at 8, 9 degrees. We weren't even at 10. But the weather was good, and you're inclined to crack on when you got the conditions, you know?
There must be a positive in that, Jim, because I know in the last number of years when we've been talking to you, you've always been talked about, the lack of moisture, and it was difficult, and, I presume coming into this growing season with moisture in the ground has to be a good thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a huge help, Michael. And like in 22, 23 and 24, we missed out on a full year's rain.
Right.
We were short. Coming into 25, we were short a full year rainfall.
Yeah. And
so there was no subsoil moisture of any kind anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it has created huge problems, which we can go through, but it's created huge problems here.
You also mentioned talking about lots of that rainfall. You mentioned to me when I was chatting to you a little earlier in the year that there was a good bit of maize that still wasn't harvested from the previous year that kind of that spilled into the spring.
Yes, what people not used to hear is damp, misty, foggy weather. The month of October, November, and December, we had a huge amount of fog and mist. Normally, I associate November with bright, sunny days. 14, 15, 16 degrees with a nice cool northerly wind, and ideal for harvesting maize. And we'll finish harvesting maize 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th November, and it'll be off in 17, 18% moisture.
Okay.
But we didn't harvest any maize this year below 24. And with the cost of energy, and a lot of Romanian farmers kind of held on when it was 24, hoping would happen. Like, for instance, the sunflowers, we had never dried sunflowers before, and this is the first year, and we took the decision on October 1st, because we had wonderful crops of sunflowers, so the best year of sunflowers ever, both yield and price, but conditions were very tough, and we took a decision then that we would dry sunflowers for the first time. And any one of your listeners that has dried wet rape with a Pedrati dryer knows the fire risk, and sunflowers are a multiple of that risk. And there was 2 very big dryers burned here, drying sunflowers, with guys trying to take out more than 3 or 4% at the one time. So, and then it just dragged on and dragged on and dragged on. And unless you were prepared to move very quickly when the opportunities came, you were going to be left. And I just want to put in this, because I want some of my team will listen to this, is on the 14th of November, we hadn't combined for 10 days. We had a huge amount of maize to harvest, and yields were good. The average yield was very good. And on the evening of the 14th, the Friday evening, we put out 2 of the combines. We normally run 3 night and day in maize, but we have 5 cutter bars, and we said, okay, there's going to be a break over the weekend. So they did a bit on Friday evening, but on Saturday morning, we put out the 5 combines, 5 maize headers and all the thing, and 2 shifts in night and day shift. And on Monday morning at 6 o'clock when it rained, they'd harvested 5,700 tons of corn.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, all at 24%. So then the 4 dryers, they were under pressure then as well. But
That's an effort,
but
yeah.
as I'm saying, and that's not to say about it, Romania, you can get great people, you can build great teams there. That
Sure.
when it has to happen, it happens very quickly.
But maybe you as an Irishman had a bit of an advantage to all the rest of them, because that's the kind of harvest that you were used to for most of your life. Kind of go, Jesus, we'll go at it now, and
Yeah.
we'll go, we're done.
Well, the guys laugh at me like my urgency,
Yeah, yeah. I can
They
imagine.
laugh
Yeah,
at me because in Ireland when the opportunity comes, you got to pull on the ball.
you got to do it. Yeah, but for
Yeah.
Jim, go back to the 15% of corn that you said was still in the ground come March.
Yeah.
How does that last, or does it deteriorate in field, or is that
Well, corn is brilliant, Michael. And you
right?
see the modern hybrids. See, the big thing is the cob hangs down when it's really ripe and has a leaf sheet on it. So the water tends to run down
Ah,
it and not into it.
okay.
And so there was bits and pieces of problems, but generally the corn holds up very well. Whereas the sunflowers, we're actually seeding for no-till seeding for a neighbour today into a soybean field that was never harvested. Quite a bit of soybean not harvested at all, and there was quite a bit, some pieces of sunflower not harvested. So it is after 3 very wet, after 3 droughts, and then you get this kind of a harvest. So really, it's not been an easy time for people here,
So the whole industry under pressure then?
under enormous pressure, under
Right.
enormous pressure, under enormous
And
pressure.
where do they go now? Is it like, I mean, from your point of view, or have you the same kind of cropping plan? Have you changed in comparison, or
We
what's
are very
happening?
much, we're very much, Michael, into sticking with the knitting. We don't jump around
Sure.
in that we have a very good rotation. We grow about 25% wheat.
Yeah.
And we actually, for the first time ever, seeded wheat between Christmas and New Year because we hadn't finished seeding and we wanted to get the hectares seeded. Now, the wheat seeded up till the 20th of November looks fantastic. What we see with Christmas and New Year is it's very ropey looking,
Okay.
but hopefully it'll come on now. We're promised rain at the weekend and that. And then we're maybe putting a small more leaning to oils. The oilseed crops last year and the year before were really the ones that carried the game.
Hmm.
Wheat is good, but the price of wheat is no good. I explained to people that in 1983 in Ireland, I sold the wheat in September for £178, which was €221, and can was €85 a ton. This is the thing, and we've got to adjust our costs to that reality.
And based on that, talking about that, you've sent me some really nice pictures of the changes that you have made over the time and continue to make in terms of a reduced cultivation system versus your traditional neighbours, and you can see a very big difference there, especially holding up in those droughty kind of conditions.
Yeah. Oh, Michael, in the drought, it's what saved us. It's what saved us, and it's enormously cut the costs of production. We didn't sow any sugar beet in 2025. We went from over 2,000 acres of beet to 0, and delighted we made it. Because the problem we were seeing, Michael, with the beet was that in the very dry years, the crops after the sugar beet were a disaster
Oh, okay.
because the beet had used all the moisture
Wasn't
right
it?
through the autumn. And the factory was dropping the price, and we had a problem with this disease called macrophomina. And because the no-till was working so well, we said our future is without beet. And so we took out the beet. But in the no-till, Michael, there's huge savings when you're into the game 5-6 years. And let me explain why. There's a bit of a myth going around the guys who follow people like Gabe Brown have this thing that if you sow multiple species cover crops and you graze them and you can get 6-7% organic matter. False. It depends on your land. It depends entirely on how much sand you have in your land.
Exactly.
If you've got 45% sand, which is plenty land in South Kildare, Carlow, that area, when you get 2%, you've worked a miracle, right? Whereas we're on clay loams and silt clay loams, which were derived from loess, which are naturally high in organic matter and will raise the organic matter because you don't have the sand. Most of our land, Michael, is between 10 and 20% sand. And you can't believe how much easier it is to farm land with 20% sand than 10%. And so, because we're growing wheat to put the cover on top of the land, and we're growing 30% of our land, so 55% of our land is basically in corn and wheat, which really raises the organic matter levels. And this is where I'm coming to. Now we have a huge amount of our land at 6% organic matter. And we're seeing we're over 5% average across the board. And we're seeing the first test now coming back with 7% organic matter. So
can I ask you, Jim, just a technical question? Is that what depth is that? Is that an average over a depth, or is that towards the surface?
It's an average, Michael. We would be soil testing down to about 20 centimeters. Okay. And as you go down along, and we've done a lot of core sampling, Michael, and we take a full thing on just core samples and the things we're finding and what we're seeing. When you lift your soil organic matter 1%, Michael, you will get an extra 22 to 30 kilos of nitrogen over the full season. Right? You will get 4 to 7 kilos of N and something of P and 4 to 7 kilos of sulfur. Okay. But the big thing is you'll store about 300 tons of carbon for 1%. So you've got to stop tilling because you've got to build soil aggregates to get the microbial activity. Because organic matter, 70% of organic matter has actually passed through a microbe. And so to raise it, and this idea you can go tilling and continue tilling and have sandy land and raise your organic matter, no, forget it. The no-till, and there's the other thing with no-till and cover cropping is water infiltration rates. If you no-till, what's becoming a bigger problem for us is that our rain comes in heavy downpours in the summer. And if you have no-till, you greatly increase the water infiltration rate. But if you have a killed off cover crop and your crop seeds into that, when you get summer rain, you double the infiltration rate. Coming back to your thing, are we reducing fertiliser? We use 55 kilos of N on all our corn last year. Our best block, 150 hectares, was 13 tons a hectare with 55 kilos of N. Now, the corn is the most suited because it has the longest growing season and it will get all the nitrogen. Whereas winter wheat for us is ripe the first half of July, so it doesn't benefit as well. And the sunflowers benefit. Now, we grew last year the best yield of sunflowers we ever had by a long stretch. We only used 40 kilos of N. With the high organic matter fields, we actually had a trial with a high grade compost tea. And if you told me this 10 years ago, I'd have laughed at you. A high quality compost tea where we harvested 3.5 tons of sunflower with no fungicide and no fertiliser. We're doing a huge amount of research and looking, Michael.
Sorry, Jim, just to say, because I think it is worth saying, for Irish listeners here listening to it, we are living in a very different climate to you.
This is the point I'm making all the time, Michael.
Yeah.
It is our problem. We don't get enough rain. Ireland's problem gets too much rain.
Completely. And to a degree, in that sense, what our research will show is that the nitrogen you have over winter, it'll all wash out. Whereas you probably don't have the same situation where you are.
You see, Michael, it depends. A lot of our land is 25, 26. A cation exchange gas of 25, 26. Okay? You'll hold 10 kilos of N for each 1 point. You're on sand, you're on 7, 8 of a cation exchange, which only holds 70, 80 kilos at the most times. So to make doubly sure that we hold on to our nitrogen is we cover crop everything going to spring crops if we can. This is the first year we failed in that. We cover crop everything because when you have high organic matter levels, you're continuously recycling nutrients and nitrogen is becoming available.
System, yeah.
That's what I think. But like, don't think you can grow these yields with sand and 2% organic matter, you know, and there's a myth being spread by some people. You know, there's the cool in thing now is to be regenerative agriculture, right? It's the real cool thing. All the big hedge funds are like, what people don't realize, Michael, regenerative agriculture is a journey, not a destination. You're continuously to improve and upgrade your land. It's a slow, methodical business. It's not a silver bullet. It is something you got to do carefully, slowly. And Michael, in changing any systems, you've got to be very careful. Because when you go changing systems, risk comes in. And there ain't the profit margins anymore to cover bad mistakes.
So that's all we have time for in this episode. But join us in a couple of weeks for the conclusion of the conversation, where I talk to Jim about what's happening around the region. As always, my thanks to Jim for joining me on the show. The Teagasc Spring Crop Walks continue in Ballybuckle on Friday, and in Kerry next Tuesday, and Naas in Kildare on Wednesday, and finally Burr in Offaly on Thursday. At each event, we'll be discussing the agronomy of spring crops with a particular focus on managing rising costs and tackling wild oat herbicide resistance. For full details of all the events, go to the Teagasc website, and you should also receive information from your local advisor in advance. So finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy, thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.